Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're so pleased to have Delegate Dolores McQuinn with us this morning. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and I am delighted to be here and to just sort of speak to the listeners of the Commonwealth. So thank you for the invite.
Well, great. Thanks for your time, because I know you're still very busy this Saturday. Hopefully you will be finished and go back to work for the City of Richmond in a different way. But I want to ask you an open-ended question. What were your expectations coming in this session, and how have those expectations proved out so far?
I think my expectations was to look at how do we address the school-to-prison pipeline, you know, making certain that we make some inroads on that. I think that the Medicaid expansion, we were hopeful that something would happen there, and I'm pleased to know that it appeared to be moving forward. I mean, we've had a few hiccups in the middle of the road, but it is my hope that we will address that. And then to look at, in light of what has happened across the Commonwealth and happening across the country in terms of the divisive issue as it speaks to race relationships. I was hoping that we would be in a position, even though you can't legislate, behaviors, that there would be ways to protect the citizens of the Commonwealth, and then to help move forward to see if we could begin to look at how do we address the issue of race relationships. How do you address the issues of people living together and being more supportive of one another? And so those were some expectations. And I think that we have had an opportunity this session in 2018 to look at some of those particular issues.
What impact has the 15 new Democratic members, especially female members, had on the delegation?
I think you have an awesome group of young people who have come aboard. All of them may not necessarily be in that certain age bracket, but for the most part, young people who come with different ideas, who are very articulate, very smart. They want to see changes made. And I think that they have been very direct in helping to accomplish that. And so I see where we have made some inroads, and that with the additional new individuals there, that I think that we are listened to a lot more, and their positions and their focus have been to let's help make changes, and that's because that's what citizens were asking for, and that's why so many of them were elected. And it certainly had been a very positive experience for us with them coming on.
So you went from a 66-34 disadvantage now to a 51-49, still a disadvantage, but it has made a big difference. You talked about Medicaid, which wasn't on the table before.
It wasn't even on the radar screen, you know, except for maybe on the Democratic side. But now the House certainly passed the budget to say, you know what, we want Medicaid expansion to occur in the Commonwealth. And I think that has something to do with those additional individuals that came aboard and those of us who have been supporting it all the time, that when you have those numbers that are so close, I think it's so extremely important that people hear what we have to say, listen to what we have to say, and act accordingly.
So what will that expansion mean for your constituents in the city of Richmond and also throughout the Commonwealth?
Well, you know, and I do too, and most of us, that there are so many individuals who struggle every day for health care. for quality health care. There are so many who don't have that, and they're constantly running to the emergency room to address even some minor issues. I think this provides some preventive care. It also, for individuals who don't have health care, period, to make sure that we are providing those kind of services, health needs and services for individuals. And I just recently talked to a person who talked about, she went to the emergency room to take her daughter who had a dislocated elbow, and she got a bill for $1,900 and had no insurance. So what happens under those circumstances? And so not only did she get a bill, she's also getting some from collection agencies saying this must be taken care of. And when you have jobs that are not paying those kind of resources and something happened, and you know what, you're just sort of what the word is, up the creek without a paddle. And I hoping that we will but now be able to address those individuals, particularly those who are in disadvantaged communities and impoverished communities, that they would feel comfortable about going to the doctor when something happens and not be looking at whether I can pay this versus, I need to go to the doctor to take care of whatever that particular issue is.
And as you so rightfully highlight, a visit to the emergency room is very expensive compared to an access to a doctor.
Right, exactly. And then you also, we must get to a place where, again, preventive care. What do you do and how do you prevent some of these, particularly these chronic illnesses that people are dealing with? And particularly in African American community, I mean, we have preventable diseases, and with health care provided, then maybe we can kind of curtail the diabetes and high blood pressure and some of these other preventable and chronic illnesses that people deal with every day. And I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity to seriously look at that and critically look at it and begin to help put people on a road or a pathway to a greater health benefits as well as a healthier lifestyle.
And of course, as I understand it, and you can comment on this as well, this also affords the opportunity to create jobs,
yes,
more jobs in the healthcare industry.
That is, and I mean, the healthcare industry is booming, as we know. And it also helped to train people for jobs. One of the things that have been attached to this bill is the issue of, making certain that you're providing training and education for able-bodied individuals who are able to work, who want to work. The bottom line is that we have not necessarily had the skills and the education to pair up with the jobs that are out there. And so this gives them an opportunity also to be trained, to provide educational opportunities and for the jobs that are publicly out there, and then hoping that you provide opportunities for people to have a quality life as well as a very productive life.
And of course, the emergency room visit with that huge bill that you highlighted, mm-hmm, is also exemplified once a year in Virginia, in Wise, Virginia, the remote access clinics that people line up for hours and overnight to attend to get basic health care.
Yeah, and that should not be. I mean, not in Virginia or anywhere else for that matter. This to me, quality health care, and matter of fact, in being able to afford the health care, it's a basic need. And that's something that government can provide and should provide. And I think, President Obama, for his forward thinking and his vision to help do this, even though they're trying to dismantle it, I believe that Virginia, we have been sort of sitting back for a while on this, and I'm hoping that the Senate, it's certainly in our budget, not in the Senate budget, but I hope that in the conference we'll be able to come together, and those conferees will work hard to be diligent in helping to make this a reality for all Virginians.
And of course, this opioid crisis,
yeah,
that everyone's suffering under now just expands the need for health care and mental health care as well.
Mental health, yes. Those are two of the I guess greater challenges that we are dealing with across the Commonwealth. And I've seen some progress being made in those particular areas to make sure that, mental health challenges that people are dealing with, not of their own, not on their own, but it is, again, as we see, an illness. And the fact that we are looking at opioid, there's a paradigm shift in terms of our thinking toward those who are addicted to substance, sometimes often beyond their control. We used to look at it as a criminal, criminalize it, and now we're beginning to move in a direction where we realize that addiction is an illness, and let's address it according to that. And I think I can see, again, since 2009 when I came into the General Assembly, the shifting in thoughts as it relates to that. And I think that is absolutely great. I mean, there are a lot of individuals, who are in jail right today because of their addiction issue that they were trying to deal with. And I'm hoping that as we move forward and begin to change our thinking on what is, those who are addicted on opiate, how do we classify people like that? And again, we're moving toward looking at it as an illness. I'm hoping that we'll also look at thho are still incarcerated because of those same kind of challenges.
And of course, you've been supportive of reforming this pipeline from our schools to the prisons. Talk to us about why that's so important.
It is so important because we have lost so many young people in a process that had been put in place and perpetuated because no one really was critically looking at it. Where kids who are coming through, many of them cannot read, their behavior issues as a result of them feeling left out of the equation. And so rather than trying to help address that, many kids have been just put out of school, suspended or expelled. And when we are doing that and not providing a quality education for kids, according to the Commonwealth's Constitution, that we should be providing education, quality education for every child. When we expel them, when we suspend them, kids are not being educated. And really, we can say that we have done some things to, encourage their demise. You cannot just, across this Commonwealth, just continually just expel and suspend schools without finding a way to address that particular issue. And many of them, by the time that they get to middle school, their life is in such shambles that, many of them quit between middle school and high school. And so what we have done was to pass a couple of bills this session that say we must critically look at this issue, we must address it, and then provide a quality education for the young people of this Commonwealth. I put in a bill for alternative classroom versus expulsion or suspension. Of course, that didn't go through, but the number of days that we are to suspend them, Jeff Bournes put in a bill, and I strongly supported that, was one of the patrons for that bill, that would, again, look at that particular issue and curtail the number of days that a child could be suspended from school.
I think that would place a cap of 45 days.
Yes, absolutely. We have no business anyway suspending elementary kids, for a whole year, middle school kids. And then, parents have come to me over the years, what do I do with my child? They can't work, and if they don't have resources, the kids are not, they have no way of even providing some other kind of education for those children. And so we've done a disservice to kids as a result of the practice. And I think that this leads us now down a pathway where we are trying to change that. And we're going to stay on it and continue to make sure that it is enforced.
And I know as a former member of the Board of Education and the City Council, you're very familiar with the kinds of trauma, both physical and mental, our youngsters are subjected to, which causes these kinds of problems in schools.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we've looked at in statistics will show that the kids it's disproportionately African American children are affected. Well, let's look at what many of African American children go through. In communities that are impoverished, they have, there are so many ills that affect those communities. First of all, their lack of resources. There are substance abuse issues. There are alcohol abuse issues. There are broken families. I mean, you name it, it has happened and occurred to African American communities over the years. Many kids hear gunshots all night long, and then they don't have the necessary food or quality food to eat. And so then we expect them to go into a classroom and they are there learning and as if nothing else has happened. Well, we know that the mind does not operate, the brains does not operate that way. And so what we are doing, I think, again, as we look at this school to prison pipeline, I think what we have done this session, and it's not completed, we need to come back and push the envelope. But I think what we have said, we've sent a clear message that we will no longer expect business as usual as it relates to our children. They're the greatest gift God has given us and the most vulnerable. We must take care of them and address the challenges that they are faced with in whatever way we can as legislators and lawmakers. And then also do a little bit more in terms of the community, because I don't feel that kids just show up at school one day and say, I'm going to misbehave. There are variables and things that affect their behavior often, and we need to make certain that we are doing what we can to address it.
So what's the prognosis for a child who reaches third grade and cannot read yet?
You and I both know what the prognosis is, and so often their lives are not successful. And so often prisons are built based on whether a child can read or not, and how big the prisons are, how many beds, if that's what you call it, available. And it's not a good prognosis. And so that component also need to be worked on. We need to make sure that pre-K opportunities are available. Early childhood opportunities are available for every child in Virginia, not just some, but every child. And I think that we can do a lot more as legislators in terms of legislating, and putting policies in place to help address that. But it's not a good prognosis. And there are, if you would do an inventory of those who are in prison today, we would find out that so many of them had that handicap. And as a result of that, their lives have been in many ways destroyed, unless there is someone who comes in and begin to help provide them the support that they need. But it is not a good prognosis, and unfortunately, we have not been as aggressive, I felt, as we should to address it.
Where are we on promoting apprenticeships in our high school, dual enrollments between the high schools and our community colleges?
In community college. We are doing well with that. That is another issue I think that we are addressing this session, because we understand that the dual enrollment, making sure that kids are there's a lifelong learning or prepared for when they leave school. Everybody's not going to go to college. Everyone is not going to, some will go into the armed services. But we want to make sure that every child, and in particular those who are interested now, that there's some skill that they have, again, that would help to encourage a very productive life for them. And I think we have looked at those things and had the discussion on that as well this year. And there will be resources put in the budget to make sure we're helping to address that.
And of course, there are a number of really well-paying jobs and opportunities for our youngsters through high school and community colleges, plumbers, electricians, welders, nurses.
Yes. And Woody, you're absolutely right, because I realized that I missed my calling when the plumber came to do something at my house, okay? And the bill was, and he stayed there for 15 minutes, and, I'm like, wow, do I have to write this check this big for what you've just done? But there are many, many opportunities out there. We just need to pair up young people with those employment opportunities. And you're right, electricians, plumbers, masonry, and it goes on, the list goes on, where a young person, all we need to do is train them, provide them the apprenticeship, and help to support them in those efforts. and many of them can live a life that pays them much more than a politician is paid. How about that?
Yes, how about that? How about that? As a matter of fact, another example of that, many of our junior colleges now offer a certificate in cybersecurity, and I understand those jobs start off at about $80,000 a year.
I miss my calling.
Yes.
I'm telling you, you're right. You're right. That is another big thing. We put actually, there's about $40 million that we're putting in the budget to look at cybersecurity and cyber issues, just the whole. And I think it's going to start in Northern Virginia, and then because so many of the cyber and computer and technology jobs up there, but it would be money that's provided for the entire Commonwealth, and looking at other universities that will also provide the skill services for in education and training for many of those young people who want to do something differently. And so I think we have been forward looking on that, and we will help to address that as well.
And the community colleges have also provided opportunities for returning veterans who have experience in theaters of war to get credit for that service.
Yes, yes, and that is. Many of us know that when there is war, so many of the veterans are those who are veterans now, but people go into war, and there are many challenges that they deal with when they're coming back. And I think we've been looked very critically at how our veterans taken care of, providing them not only in terms of training for those particular jobs and using whatever training that they received when they were in the service, but also to make sure that our veterans are taken care of once they come home. If they are protecting our country and protecting our state and our communities in terms of the services that they provide, we must do whatever is necessary to protect them once they come home.
Back to race relations. You talked about that earlier, and I know you, among others, gave some very impassioned remarks on the House of the floor of delegates recently regarding gun control because of some remarks by one of your colleagues that was taken, that did not provide the context necessary to explain the background for that. Talk to us about those issues. In spite of the 51-49 makeup of the House of Delegates, none of those bills have gone anywhere.
They have not, and it's so unfortunate because we have an opportunity to be the leaders in this conversation in terms of gun control and gun safety, especially in light of what has happened in Virginia, with Virginia Tech, with some of the other mass shootings that have occurred, not only in Virginia, but in this Commonwealth. And I think that we have failed. I think we have failed the citizens, and that we have not moved this. I had a bill that looked at keeping guns out of the libraries, and that failed. And it was just a number of bills that didn't go, really didn't go anywhere. And it's unfortunate because the fact that we are feel that it's okay, majority of my colleagues, and particularly on the other side, feel that it's all right for everyone to have a gun, those who are mentally ill, for guns to go into the libraries, for guns to be at certain places across this Commonwealth. Again, I just think it's so unfortunate. Speaking to the issue of race relations and whatnot, there were so many things when my colleagues spoke on this particular issue on gun control and gun safety, and it was so many things that was tossed into that whole conversation. And one of those things which was very offensive to many of us who, as African American, was the issue of slavery and Jim Crow. And when I look at what happened in the history and the legacy of slavery, there are so many families, even after 150-some years after the emancipation of slavery, there are many families who are still trying to get on an even playing field as a result of that. It was a painful experience. It was an experience where thousands and millions suffered and died. And so when you're talking about one issue, it needs to all be in context with what's supposed to be discussed around gun control. And to toss something in which is still so painful to so many of us, we just thought that it was out of boundaries. He had just gone way beyond the bounds that should have been set for this discussion. And I think for us to stand up and speak to it, I think was absolutely right, the right thing to do, because there are some things that you just don't use as a political football without some knowledge and understanding of what people have gone through and what they're still going through as a result of what occurred.
I believe you had quoted Fannie Lou Hamer from
Yes.
Mississippi. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah, and that is the reality with some of these things. When I look at what happened in Charlottesville, we had to relive, many of us had to relive some of our experiences from a childhood because of what happened in Charlottesville, to see, you know, the racist attitudes and the ideology, and not only from Charlottesville, but even from the White House. You know, we're now just kind of having all of those things are resurfacing for some of the things that we had been suppressing over the years, as it relates to experiences that and what we've heard, you know, some of the verbal or oral history that has been shared with us. And we're just sending a message. We don't want to tolerate that, you know, among our colleagues in the General Assembly. You know, if you're going to, you do something to encourage, inspire, and enhance the quality of life. You don't do anything to those particularly who have been already oppressed. You know, do no damage. You know, and so I did quote her in that. But I think what our young people are saying too across this Commonwealth, that they're sick and tired of being sick and tired of seeing so many of their peers, you know, fall and prey to gun control that's out of control.
Now, what about this issue of Confederate monuments? I know there was a bill introduced which would give local governments the ability to make that determination about whether those statues would remain in public view, so to speak. I always thought that was a very conservative approach. Let localities make that decision, but that bill couldn't pass.
No, that did not pass, and I think that there are so many who, you know, and I think I have mixed emotions. I mean, I've been one who have been working to preserve history, and so I have mixed emotions about that. I have been working diligently not to necessarily pull anything down, but let's put up some statues of African American heroes and sheroes that have made outstanding contributions, so that they're the equalizers. What we do, we put some up, then it becomes a balanced effort in telling the story, the entire story. And I've dedicated much of my life to helping, again, to preserve history and make sure that side of the story, we hear about the Civil War, we hear about the Confederate, you know, soldiers and those things, but the contributions of African American have not necessarily been balanced, telling that story. And we know that this nation was built on our backs. And so my energy and time and resources have been, you know, geared toward, let's make certain that side of the story is told. I want my grandbabies to know, you know, of the contributions of people that look like her, what those contributions are. And I think we could do a much better job in getting that done.
Well, thank you for being with us,
Thank you.
Dolores McQuinn. Good to see
Thank
you. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.